I'm John Batchelor. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com is here with me. An attack in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang, say the Chinese. East Turkestan, say the Uyghurs. This is westernmost part of now claimed Chinese empire. East Turkestan. It is a vast landscape. It is critical for the development of the Chinese Communist Party because the pipelines from Central Asia and also the natural resources are there for development. The immigration these last decades has carried the Han Chinese from eastern China into East Turkestan that was largely unoccupied. Urumqi, however, is the scene of an explosion in these last hours. 7 p.m. Urumqi time in these last 12 hours at the Urumqi South Railway Station. 3 dead reported so far, 79 injured. The significance of this attack is that this is in a series of attacks in East Turkestan, different cities. There was a knife-wielding attack some weeks ago, and all these attacks are said by the central government in Beijing to be the acts of terrorists. Gordon, the attack in Urumqi follows other attacks that are very much the product of what looks to be deep frustration and resentment and rebellion by the Uyghurs, who are being suppressed, marginalized, even possibly completely destroyed by the central government in Beijing. This attack came at the end of Xi Jinping's 4-day visit to Xinjiang. Can we regard this as a direct attack on Xi Jinping, the president of China?
Oh, certainly. There's no coincidences here. And essentially what we have is somebody, Uyghurs, maybe Arab insurgents, who have decided that it's time to take on not only local authorities, but also the central authorities in the form of China's ruler, Xi Jinping.
We welcome Alim Seytoff, the president of the Uyghur American Association, to comment upon this. I thank him for coming on so quickly. This news is within these last hours. Alim, this event in Urumqi with Xi Jinping's visit there, how will the people of the Uyghur people of East Turkestan, how will the Uyghurs in the diaspora regard this? Good evening to you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me on the show. And this is the first visit by Xi Jinping to East Turkestan, and it's a surprise visit. He visited Chinese military barracks and called on the Chinese military to get ready to put down any kind of Uyghur rebellion against Chinese rule, and he basically endorsed Chinese government's colonial policies. And then we learned just yesterday this train attack took place. So we see this as Uyghur people's defiance against Chinese government's colonial rule in East Turkestan and the total rejection of Xi Jinping's policies. It's also an indication of the total failure of Chinese government's colonial policy in the region.
Alim, I certainly have to agree that what we have is a Chinese central government, a communist party that does not know what to do with East Turkestan. You know, essentially they've been using more and more force, but as they do that, the attacks have become bigger, more sophisticated, clearly better planned. And what we apparently are going to see is more of this. How do you view this?
Yes, after Xi Jinping became China's president more than a year ago, and his position on the Uyghur issue is not a soft approach, but actually even harder than the previous president Hu Jintao. So during his one-year rule, there were more instances of violence in the region, and the Chinese security forces were given green lights in each case to shoot and kill the Uyghurs, then accuse them of terrorism. And last year we witnessed several hundred Uyghurs were killed as a result by Chinese security forces extrajudicially. So the Uyghur people have had enough of Chinese rule, and especially the rule of Xi Jinping. And I believe the more the Xi government takes a hard line on the Uyghurs, there will unfortunately be more violent reactions.
Alim, it was interesting that there was an attack on the Kunming rail station, which is outside of East Turkestan in China's southwest. And there seems to be some indications that the attackers weren't Uyghurs, but were Muslim insurgents who took up the Uyghur cause. What do you think occurred down there? Because this is really not only puzzling, but if it's true, this is a significant development.
Yes, what happened in Kunming was the Chinese government provided very little evidence as to whether it was carried out by the so-called Uyghurs. And when the train attack took place, the Chinese government immediately blamed it was a work of the Uyghur extremists. Then it showed the photos of a few Uyghurs who were shot dead. Then the Chinese government showed as evidence just a long knife and also another flag, so-called extremist flag. The flag actually was neither a Uyghur flag nor a so-called extremist flag. It's a very strange flag. And the knife the Chinese government showed as evidence, usually not the knife. It's not the Uyghur knife, and then usually not the knife used by the Uyghurs. But the Chinese government provided very little information on the Kunming attack. Other than this, nothing else. Then the government covered up everything else, watched the crime scene. In a matter of hours, the train station was in business as usual. Then they just focused on two congresses. Now, nobody in China talks about Kunming attack or what exactly happened, and where did the Uyghurs come from if they did it, and who they were, and no question asked. So we're not even sure those so-called Uyghurs actually carried out the attack, or it was, as some Chinese media reported, maybe a work of the Chinese government, or maybe the work of some other extremist groups.
This attack on Urumqi, do you believe this is Uyghurs, Alim?
This, we are still not sure, because every time something like this happens, allegedly involving Uyghurs, the Chinese government's line has always been consistent, which is they say it's a premeditated terrorist attack by Uyghur extremists or terrorists instigated by outside three forces or East Turkestan forces. So we see it's the same line with this attack this time, very similar to the line used for the Kunming attack and the last year's Tiananmen attack. But Chinese government deleted all the in China right now, you basically cannot search the Xinjiang train attack in Chinese. All of them are deleted, and all the other postings, photos are deleted by the Chinese government. So the Chinese government apparently has something to hide.
Alim Seytoff is the president of the Uyghur American Association. Gordon, this happens on the fourth day of Xi Jinping's visit. This is a failure of intelligence gathering. It's a failure of the security forces. Does that mean that Xi Jinping will clean house again?
He very well may, and very well he may have enemies who are not Uyghurs who may have had something to do with this.
And the previous security chief of China is the one who and whose family have been purged. That suggests that perhaps they didn't purge enough.
And that Xi Jinping has enemies who are Han Chinese, who very well may be connected in some way with Zhou Yongkong, the target of Xi Jinping's purge.
Gordon Chang of Forbes.com, Alim Seytoff, we thank you. I'm John Batchelor.